Rebel may have shared this with you. We have just sent out like what we call a new messaging book. And that's where we're changing our language. And I've been with Texas CASA for 18 years. And part of our language is that we are here for the child. We are the eyes and ears of the court. These are all messaging and information that we've shared for a really long time. And now we're shifting that to include family, even though you guys are probably always working with families, but now it's in our message, it's in our language, it's in our practice, it's in the things that we do. And so that goes for how we talk about race. So I'm going to be going back and forth, kind of sharing some screens here, and I hope I can do a good job with that. If not, Rebel is going to walk me through. So if you guys be patient, we'll get through it. So the first thing I want to share with you guys is I want to look at courageous conversation. Give me a minute here.
And when you're on the slide you want, you can click that little there, the presentation thing at the bottom of your screen, and it'll go to full screen.
All right, what do you see right now?
We see, in what ways does white fragility impede conversations about race?
All right, that's not what I want you to see. Do you see courageous conversation now? Okay.
We do.
All right. So what I want to talk to you guys about today, because later on we are going to have a courageous conversation, because I'm going to ask you some questions at the end of the presentation. But what I want you to know is, what is a courageous conversation? And one of the things, a skill that we want you to have is, whenever talking about race or ethnicity or diversity, sometimes it can be challenging and not always easy for us to do. So one of the things, and we feel like you can do these things amongst each other with your peers and things like that. You may not always be able to do these steps in having a courageous conversation with people that may not be aware, but you can practice having these conversations with each other. And so the first thing is to stay engaged. When someone's talking with you, do not let your heart or your mind, check out the conversations. Be present. Be present when you're talking to someone. The second thing for having a courageous conversation is to speak your truth. A lot of times when we're talking about diversity or race or ethnicity or anything that may cause people to have some discomfort, sometimes people are afraid to offend. But when you're having a courageous conversation, everybody at the table, we would like for you to be able to speak your truth. And that's because when you don't speak your truth, it could lead to deeper confusion, mistrust, and misunderstanding. One thing I want you to know too is that you're going to more than likely experience discomfort. And I don't know if you've ever had a discussion around race or ethnicity or LGBTQ. Sometimes it's going to make you feel uncomfortable. And we actually want you to embrace that, because discomfort sometimes leads to action. And by being able to have courageous conversations, we hope that the action would be something that would end up being positive. So you're going to feel uncomfortable, but we don't want you to feel unsafe. So there is a difference, but you will experience discomfort around these topics. And then the last is expect and accept non-closure. And a lot of times when people see this, they may think this is to agree to disagree. And basically, for me, that's not what this means. To expect and accept non-closure means that maybe we've had a discussion and now we're at a crossroads, you know. I don't know if I'm necessarily agreeing with what that conversation is. However, I have time to go home and process it, and I have the opportunity to come back. If I expect and accept non-closure, I have the opportunity to come back to my peer, to my friend, and say, you know what, I've really been thinking about what you said the other day. I kind of want to know a little bit more about that. It keeps the dialogue open. And what we have found in doing this work around diversity, equity, and inclusion is it's necessary to keep the dialogue open. That's an important thing to remember, is that you want to keep the dialogue open. The other thing that I want to just take a moment to talk to you about is a simple way of saying the difference between equity and equality, because we're evolving our language and we're getting more knowledge and more information. So I'm going to give you a visual. There are 3 children, and you may have seen this. This has been a big thing on the internet, where these 3 kids are watching a baseball game, and there is a fence between them and the kids. And each kid is pretty much, 2 of the kids are tall enough to see over the fence, but there's a little one that's not as tall to see over the fence. So what you see is these building blocks where they stack it. So the little kid is now equal with the other boys, and now they both can see over the fence. And so when you think about equity, kind of leads to equality. So, you know, it's also about like finding out what it is that this family needs, what it is that this child really needs to get to that next place, right? So in this case, that child needed 2 building blocks. Well, as we evolve, we want to push further with regards to equity. And so what we might want to start doing is asking questions. And that question could be, is this fence really necessary? So where we're up here trying to get the resources and tools that we think that this child needs, maybe we should be asking the question, what can we do with the fence? Can we just remove the fence? And a lot of times I see that as the system that we are sometimes up against when you're working in the foster care system, the practices, the policies that you know are happening. How do we begin to question those? Any thoughts or comments? All right. So today we're going to have a courageous conversation around phrases. And I don't know if you've ever heard this phrase before. Have you ever heard the phrase, I don't see color? Yeah. Right. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and we're going to have a courageous conversation around that. And one of the things I want you to remember are the steps that I talked about with regards to having a courageous conversation. Can anyone remember? Did anyone take good notes about having a courageous conversation? Tell me what good students you are.
Well, I have notes from last year, but I don't know that I can quote them off the top of my head.
I can. Oh, you mean from the ones you just said or from last year?
The ones I just said.
Oh.
Stay engaged, speak your truth, experience discomfort, and accept non-closure.
Beautiful. Thank you. Now,
really like competition around here, so don't make us compete against one another, because it's all downhill from there.
I love
I had the notes. I thought it was from last year, so I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
No, that's okay. So now answer this for me. When you think about the steps of having a courageous conversation, and we're going to talk about the phrase, I don't see color. Is anybody feeling a little maybe uncomfortable? Like this might be an interesting conversation to have? Yeah.
I think it's an interesting conversation to have. I've had it before.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, right, today. And then we're going to have a courageous conversation around it because I also have some questions. So I'm going to see if I can share my screen again. Share sound. All right. Do you guys see it? Yes. Do you see the screen, PowerPoint? Yeah.
Yes, we see the
And
one
then-
that's decoded. I don't see race.
And then you let me know if you can hear it. Oh,
Have you ever wondered why people say, "Oh, I don't
pause.
see color"?
Okay, so I want to make sure
Hear
you
it?
can. Oh,
This is the checkers game where
We
grandson
hear it,
and
but we don't
granddad
see
will
anything other than that
Okay.
one screen.
This is
okay.
the kitchen.
Hang on.
It wasn't the video, I don't think. It was just the,
Okay. I'm gonna try it this way.
we had it ready, didn't we?
We
We
did.
tried it,
We did.
but they're patient. They'll be okay.
Forgive me here for a minute.
May I ask a quick question? I signed in a little bit late and I would like to know where you are because I want to go visit there someday.
No, right? I'm not sure where I am, but I like it. And it's
Okay,
comforting.
I just had to get this off. It is a screen. You are not there, or are you there?
I am not there.
Oh, man.
I know,
Okay.
right?
Right. Thank you. Now I can concentrate better.
All right, here we go. I'm gonna try it again. Okay, do you see the video?
Now we see the video.
Yes.
Yay. And tell me if you can hear it.
Wonder why people say,
Yes.
Yes.
All right. This is exciting.
Progress.
Yay.
"Oh, I don't see color" as a way to fix racism. Yeah, that doesn't work. On this show, we talk about race all the time, but I've got a bomb to drop. Biologically speaking, race doesn't exist. Oh my goodness, we've all been lied to! Wait, why am I hosting this show? So race isn't biological, but the social construct of race and racism still have a very real impact on everyone's lives. And this isn't just about feelings. Race is all about the structural foundation of social power. So why do so many people incorrectly think race is biological? Well, beyond the fact that we like to group people based on external characteristics, it goes like this. In biology, there is a concept of genetically different subspecies, which a lot of people confuse with human races. Biologists actually have a scale for this, and humans don't even come close to qualifying. Throughout history, people have used this incorrect understanding of subspecies to justify all kinds of terribleness, and even races as less than human. But modern genetics has shown that the lines around race are so arbitrary that they're actually meaningless. And since I'm not a scientist, I'll take a quote. Francis Collins, the director of the National Human Genome Research Institute, said it himself: "Those who wish to draw precise racial boundaries around certain groups will not be able to use science as a legitimate justification." Oops, I dropped the mic. So if race doesn't exist biologically, why do we keep talking about it? Sound the alarm. We keep talking about race because we created it. Yay, us! That's right, race is a social construct. A social construct is a category, perception, or idea created and developed by society and then applied to individuals or groups. But social constructs are still very real and have huge impacts on our lives. Because you know what else is a social construct? Money. And if you don't think money has an enormous impact on your life, well then congratulations. You either have a trust fund or you're an adorable baby. Or maybe you're a dog. Here's what I know. Talking about racism just creates more racism. No. First off, race isn't the problem. Racism is. And even if it was the problem, problems don't get worse when you talk about them, and they don't magically go away when you ignore them. Not true. I had 5 cavities, I ignored them, and all 5 of those teeth fell out. Poof. Problem solved. Colorblindness, while nice in theory, has no effect on structural and institutional racism. Racism is a system, and that system benefits certain people at the expense of others. Ignoring it just lets those problems persist. Don't believe me? Let's take a look at some examples where colorblindness doesn't work. Number 1, preschool punishment. Let's face a fact. Preschool-aged children of every race are monsters. But according to the U.S. Department of Education Office for Civil Rights report released in 2014, Black children make up 18% of preschoolers, but almost half of all suspensions. Half. And I don't think anybody believes all these preschool teachers are racist, out to get little Black children, but the data shows that Black and Latino children often face steeper punishments than their white classmates for the same behavior. That's a problem. And simply believing we shouldn't see race or we shouldn't talk about race does nothing to solve this problem. Number 2, the name study. A study by the National Bureau of Economic Research confirmed that people with ethnic sounding names, that's a whole nother episode, are less likely to get interviewed when they apply for jobs. Meanwhile, applicants with white sounding names actually get 33% more callbacks for interviews. It's the equivalent of having 8 years of additional experience. Shout out to all the white Taquans struggling to get job interviews. And it's not just Black and white. They've done similar studies around the world, and in Canada, people with white-sounding names were 35% more likely to get callbacks than people with Indian or Chinese-sounding names. So instead of just assuming people shouldn't care about color or names, companies, governments, and schools should take the bias out of hiring and experiment with nameless resumes to, solve the problem. Number 3, renting an apartment. When the Department of Housing and Urban Development and the Urban Institute did a study about real estate, they found that Black, Latino, and Asian renters were shown up to 12% fewer units than white renters. And when the Fair Housing Justice Center used actors to apply for apartments, they found that Black and Latino renters were often told there were no apartments available, while white applicants were shown apartments in the same building. So this building has a pool, a laundry room, and a racist landlady. Colorblindness won't fix housing discrimination. We're going to need smart laws and a concerted effort for that. So tell me again how colorblindness is going to fix the fact that I can't get an education, a job, or a house. In many cases, colorblindness is actively harmful because it creates a false sense of security for the groups it directly benefits. The people who've benefited from systemic racism can assume that they got the job or a house or weren't suspended from preschool simply because they were more qualified or just better. Ignoring race or only acknowledging that it doesn't exist biologically is not a solution to these systemic issues. It takes work, effort, laws, and new systems to undo racism. These differences may seem minute, but they're part of a very large structure of oppression that's been ingrained in us. If we can understand that we made it up, we can actively work to change it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time right here on Decoding.
All right. Is everybody still breathing?
Yes.
Okay. So my first question, what's coming up for you?
Anybody?
I think what came up for me was many things, but what maybe surprised me was about the elementary school children and the Black and Latino Asians were, disciplined more than the white children.
Yeah, there is a concept out there called, and it's based on statistics, called school to the prison pipeline. And yeah, school to the prison pipeline. And basically it's the statistics that talk a lot about the gap, of course, of brown and Black children in the education system, as well as the discipline actions that are, gets conducted with Black and brown children. And I was that you, Sally, that spoke up? Yeah, I really appreciate that you noticed that, because a lot of times when we were talking about this as advocates, you might think, "Well, why do I need to have this information? What makes this important to me?" And when I talked earlier, I said that there's this terminology called disproportionality, and it's where children are being removed at a higher rate. But what you should know is there is nothing. There's no statistical, I can't even say it, static. There's no stats. There's none that says African American children are being, and families are abusing at a higher rate. So you want to like, why is this happening? So one of the things, if you ever get a chance to look up there, it's called the groundwater analysis. And you may have heard of something like this before. It's, for example, if you're walking down a river, walking down a sidewalk, and there's a river, and then all of a sudden one fish is showing up, and that fish appears sick or dead, right? And you're like, oh, wow, that's odd. But you keep walking, and then you're starting to see more and more fish that seem sick and dying. You're probably going to initially say, oh, I wonder what's going on with the fish the first time. But once you start to see a lot more fish, you're going to probably want to ask, what is going on in the water? What is going on in the water? And if you want to look at the water as our system, that's what we're talking about. What's going on in our system that Black and brown children are being removed at a higher rate? What's going on in our system where Black and brown children are not finding, being reunited back home or being adopted? What's going on in our system when all of our children may be aging out of the system versus finding permanency? And that's our role as an advocate, right? Is to be able to advocate for safe, permanent homes for these children. So you have to look at the system. And one of the things about the groundwater analysis that was one of the presenters talked about was the mindsets of people. All of us have our biases. All of us have our experiences and our perception. And so this example that they gave was about a CPS worker getting a call, and you guys probably can relate to this. And depending on the zip code of where they got the call from, they already made the decision to put the baby seat in the car. So you know where I'm going with this, right? Maybe in your area, it may be a certain area where certain things are happening all the time. So it doesn't really surprise you that you're advocating now for a child from a certain community. Am I making sense? Right? It's our perception. It's also reality. Doesn't necessarily mean it's not true. But then what do we do with this information? And how do we try make sure that we're not repeating these things?
Dennise,
Right?
can I ask you to clarify? Because it's like I can't go on listening until I get this right in my head. What kind of water analysis? Are you saying ground?
Ground, Ground.
Okay, I heard brown at first, which was kind of making sense. All right, sorry.
It could be brown. Yeah, groundwater analysis. And I'll send the link to Rebel, so to make sure you get the right one I'm talking about, just to kind of get a better understanding. And then how the system plays in this. And a lot of times what happens as advocates, as we talk about DEI and things like that, sometimes it's really hard not to kind of personalize the things that we hear and think, are you talking about me? And it's kind of bigger than that. Now it's about the system, and it's about the role we all play in the system. Are we perpetuating the system? And it's basically the terminology could be systemic racism, like what's already happening in the system and that has been happening in the system. What are some things that we can do to make it different? And like a lot of the power that you all have is how you advocate and how you see families and what you're saying to families and how you're connecting with families. It's going to make a big difference on the results of what's going to be happening for and to children. Does that make sense? So it's a challenge for each and every one of you to begin to have these types of conversations. So where we started off is we want to have a courageous conversation around, I don't see color. And so my question to you is, like, what's your takeaway from what you heard? When I say what's coming up for you, what's your takeaway from that phrase, I don't see color? What did you learn from that, from the video?
I think one of the things, I have a couple of thoughts. I mean, I was really fortunate enough to start these conversations back in grad school, right? I have a social work background, and I learned pretty quickly after I got out of grad school, like people aren't having these conversations regularly. And it's been so fascinating with all of this past year and all of the horrific things that have happened, people are talking about it more, right? And so it's been so interesting to keep hearing the different, I don't see color, or I'm not going to serve them any differently, or whatever that looks like. I think, again, I'm a statistics person, like seeing color is so important to knowing where people come from. And again, like you said, identifying all the things that are happening in the background, right? And so if we don't see color and we don't see the relating this to CASA, we don't see the whole child. We're taking them out of their context. And, again, there's so many, the child welfare system is so systemized, right? You have the child welfare system. You have now, I think about the JDC system. You were talking about disabilities. You were talking about poverty. You were talking about drug addiction. So I just think that when we say, I don't see color, you're taking the kid out of its context. You're stripping them of who they are.
Right. So why do you think that people, okay, I won't say why. What is it about that term? Do you feel that people use it?
Yeah.
So I can tell you what comes up for me, and I think you heard it also in the video, is that I think that is code word for people to say to you, or to me, mainly, probably really to me, I'm not prejudiced. I don't see color, right? So it's been a tool that most people think have been used for good, right? And so by saying, I don't see color, it's a way that I think people feel like, hey, I welcome you. Now you've just learned that may not be true. And so that's what I want to have that courageous conversation about. What are your thoughts about that, right? Here was a phrase and something that you would say, or people would say, or I have even heard said to me, is I don't see color, and thinking, man, this is really good, right? We're going to get along great. But I think what you're hearing, and sort of what Lauren was saying, is if you don't see color, you don't see me. So the question would be, what is it about that phrase that people feel, and this is a conversation, I'm not saying anyone here has ever used it, that feel like, man, I thought that was a really good phrase. What's coming up? What did you learn from the video that could help you kind of have a better understanding that it's not. It's what
I like-
Corinne said. Go
Oh,
ahead,
sorry.
Wendy.
I think I overspoke someone. Sorry.
It's okay.
That particular phrase has always been strange to me just because we're all a color. You know what I mean? So like if you don't, that's that particular, I'm always like, well, if you don't see a color, then you don't see a person because we're all a color. You know what I mean? So like I don't struggle with that one, but I do struggle with like that whole concept of should you even say something. So when I'm in the presence of my Black friends or new Black or Hispanic or people, whatever that I've met, like, is there something I should say to indicate? I don't know. Like, I do find that conflict. Like, is there, how do I project? And is it just by my, because I feel like I should like say something like, I like you or something, you know, but I don't know, like, it feels like there should be a step there, but maybe not. Maybe it's just a time thing in relationships and stuff. But it does seem to be like, is there something to say that's appropriate? I don't even know. I'm just going to turn my mic off now.
So Dennise, real quick, I'm probably close to being one of the older on this call, but when people say that to me, it's like they're searching for something, kind of where Wendy was going. Don't search for anything to say. It's all in how you treat me. And so if you tell me this, that, you know, I don't see color, but you treat me differently from the other people that we're with, you do see color. You're bringing forth all of your personal beliefs, unbiases, and all of that. Just let it alone. Let's just, you know, have a good time together, be together, and don't try to pick what you think I need to hear because you are trying to not see color. Because I promise you, most people see color first before they get to know the person.
Thank you, Dee. That is helpful. I think I used to not to, but it feels like since the conversation is so prevalent now, and I think that's a good thing. Like, I'm glad it is that we're talking about race, but it feels like now I feel like I come at a disadvantage into the, you know what I'm saying? Where I used to not feel that way when we weren't talking about it because, I don't know. I'm just going to shut my mic off again.
No, Wendy, that's really good though, because, you know, it is harder to talk about. Just it is, right? So we understand that. And so one of the things that I want you to know about this term is like a statement like, I don't see color, I'm colorblind. It assumes that people of color are just like you and have the same dreams, standards, problems that you do. Colorblindness negates the cultural values, norms, expectations. And then it also negates kind of the life experiences of people of color. Does that make sense? So even an individual white person could ignore a person's color, society does not. And I think that that's kind of what's happening now, Wendy, is like, you know, maybe we didn't have to talk about it before, but now with everything that's really more out in the open because of social media, no new news to a lot of us on this Zoom, but a lot new news to others. So by not saying we do not see a person's color, you're also kind of saying something about whiteness, that you don't see whiteness. And so this just denies people of color's experience of racism. And I know this offends people, but and your experience of privilege. So, and this is the part where we divide.
So,
right?
Dennise, if you don't mind, I just wanted to touch on that really quickly, just a little bit of my personal experience. My whole life, I've always thought myself as very open-minded. I have a 14-year-old daughter that we're trying to share that with. And over the past year, so much new stuff has been brought up that we've been trying to keep her well aware of. And I know somewhere in my past, I've used the phrase, I'm colorblind, our family doesn't see color. And I've learned so much in the past year that it does take away from the past. It takes away from anybody's past. Of course we see color, everybody sees color, and you do have to, as a white person, accept my privilege of that, and of knowing if I were of a different color in certain situations, that could have turned out very differently for myself or my family. And just to be able to recognize that and portray it. And another thing I've come to realize is, especially with so much going on, I feel like people who are Black have had to console white people a lot and tell you, I'm sorry, you're not a racist. And I just feel like it is not of the Black race it's not your responsibility to console us and tell us that we're not racist. We just need to use our actions and present that. So that's been something I've just done a lot of reading and have learned a lot about, and just realized that there is so much room for improvement in the way we see all of this.
What's the phrase for that? Do you know? But you just like the consoling.
Probably, but it just left my mind.
So
white
first
fragility.
White fragility. Right?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So now, for
But
some people,
may I say one quick thing? Back to this whole great conversation we just had, it really did just bring something forward for me. I've lived in the same neighborhood here since 2007, I think. And during all of the racial tensions and things we've had, a neighbor that I speak to all the time, and we just say hello as neighbors, he actually walked down one day, and I was outside in the yard, and he wanted to talk about race. Now, so all of a sudden, he saw the Black woman and he wanted to understand. And so I guess I'm rethinking the whole thing. Yes, he saw race, but then he was trying to have the conversation. And whereas all these years in the past, it was just, hi neighbor. Right. But then now he sees another person. He wanted to know the person. Yeah. So I just have to rethink that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Thank you. Okay, so I've got some other questions that I want to ask you, but I kind of want to close this out a little bit as far as, so just, maybe some thoughts. Like what's going through your mind right now? Right. So do you feel like we're having a courageous conversation? Do you feel like people have stayed engaged? Yeah.
Yes. I will say I was trying to multitask and do something else, and this conversation was so engaging. I minimized my other stuff and put you full screen. So
okay. What's the other one for courageous conversations? I want you guys to tell it back to me. So we got stay engaged. What's the other one?
Speak your truth.
Right. Do you feel people are speaking their truth?
Yes.
Right. And do you feel like do you feel like there's respect happening and there's listening and different experiences are coming to the table, right? Like my experience may be different than your experience, but we all have a voice right now. We all are engaged in this together. And that's the beauty of having a courageous conversation. Okay. So what's the next one? Are we feeling any discomfort?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little uncomfortable.
But we feel safe.
But you feel safe. And what about expect and accept non-closure? Because maybe some people might be saying, I don't know if I get this. What the heck do you want from me? You want me to see color? You don't want me to see color. I mean, now it's okay to see color. Now it's not okay to see color. It's confusing. But that is what expect and accept non-closure is. And it goes back to what Dee says, you get to go and continue the dialogue though. Guys, I want to talk about this a little bit more because I don't know how I feel about that. And that's okay. And that's the beauty of having courageous conversations, because in the end, you're going to be able to problem solve, and you're going to be able to come up with new solutions, new ways of doing things. So I want to go back. I want to ask a question of you. Tell me, in what ways does the foster care system reflect colorblind ideologies and discourse around race?
What ways?
That's a big question. Repeat it again.
In what ways does the foster care system reflect colorblind ideologies and discourse around race? What does that look like for you?
I just have a quick example. Sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot, but I had some the advocates actually on this call, but some three they're actually African boys. They're actually refugees, so they're removed from a home and placed in another African foster home. Excuse me. And the way that family did things were different. You know, like they just functioned differently, and they ended up being removed. And I'm not sure, you know, in this case, that ended up being a good thing, but in other cases, like, why weren't we just instead either making expectations more clear or giving allowances for what was normal for them, you know? And so I do think we have this standard of like what a family is supposed to look like and be like, and it can be very different from that and be fine. So that's my
Beautiful. Wendy, that is on point. And as advocates, remember when I talked earlier about the fence? We want to be able to ask those questions. We want to begin to have courageous conversations. And that is typical what happens in the foster care system for people who probably, and I don't know exactly in this situation, who don't see race. If they see a person that appears Black, they may be putting that child in what they consider maybe a Black home. But what if the child's really Puerto Rican and nothing is working here, right? They're like, this is not working. This is not how we do in my family. It's having those conversations and really finding out, who are you? How do you identify? And courageous conversations, we talk about intersectionality, when everything comes together, right? Race, ethnicity, LGBTQ, poverty, disabilities. Let's say they all come together. How do we begin to have conversations around this to begin to give the best possible outcome for a child, right? What voice can you give as an advocate? The other thing that we do, I think, is how we report things. You know, a lot of times we just report numbers. We don't see people, we don't see race, we don't see gender. We just say, well, we have 20 volunteers. Okay, well, out of those 20 volunteers, how many are African American? How many are identify as Hispanic? How many are LGBTQ? How many are men? It's always about going deeper. Thinking about that. Why is that important? What makes that important? Always going deeper. Any other ways that you feel like the foster care system reflects colorblind ideologies?
So I'm going to be real honest. I don't exactly understand the question. So I don't know if this is going to even be an answer for it, but I do have a recent personal experience on one of my cases. I have a case who the entire family is Black, and my advocate on the case was Black as well. And she really liked being able to be on that case. When they were in the courtroom, she was the only other Black person in the courtroom. All the attorneys were white, judges were white, and she had to take a step back from the case for personal reasons. And so I stepped in and filled her shoes. And I just felt really nervous about it. I thought that they had, you know, kind of lost that connection in the courtroom. And I just felt really, really nervous about it. And she is done with her kind of personal leave and was ready to come back on. And the family actually requested that I stay on. And it made me realize that I was making an assumption that because she was Black, the family connected better with her, but it ended up not being the truth. And they ended up feeling more comfortable with me being with them. And so I just realized that that was an assumption that I had made that was not true. And so I know that probably doesn't have anything to do with your question, but it just was something recent that happened, and it has just been on my mind a lot because, I know we're all trying very hard not to make assumptions, and that happened. So
No, actually, I hear what you're saying with respect to that, and that is true. Assumptions. We're making assumptions, right? Like the assumption might be, so what are you saying, Dennise? Do we need to, like whenever we talked about diversity before in the past and like even recruiting for more diversity, and especially when it came to race and ethnicity, what I would hear a lot from people is like, well, what about us? I mean, what do you think? We've been here, white people, we've been here, we're doing a job. Now you're saying we're not good enough? That is the assumption, and that is not true, right? That is the assumption. It is not true. One thing, I was in a meeting and I was talking to an engineer, I guess, and one of the things that he said that stood out for me about diversity is that if you get a lot of people to the table and you have a lot of voices, you might have one problem, but you might come up with 20 ways to do it. And I love that. And so many times we come up with one way in the system, just one way, right? So a child is moved from their community, their family, everything they know, their friends, and then they're placed in a totally with strangers. And it's just automatic, right? It's just automatic. There's no forethought to what is it that this child needs. It's just, hey, there's a home and we're moving the child. The child is here now. Child is safe. Now, CASA comes along. And if you start to go deeper and start to ask certain questions and more questions, you're going to learn more about the child, probably even more about the family than most. And then you can begin to ask those questions. What's truly in the best interest of the child? And what we hope to do is to be able to give you all the knowledge and education and understanding of the communities that these kids are coming from, and to recognize that their experiences are and more than likely different than yours. And if that is so, as an advocate for these children, what can you do? Right? What can you do more of? How can you advocate for these children and not be colorblind? Right? Don't be colorblind. Really look at the situation, really find out what's going on. Begin to ask those powerful questions to be able to help these children with the best outcomes. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so in what ways can CASA change their policies or practices to better support racial equity? What are some things that this program can do differently? And maybe think about, what we're doing now, pre-service training or in-service training, right, for staff. What are you thinking about? What are some things? I mean, you guys are already doing some things, clearly, because you're having this, right? You're having these types of discussions. I can see diversity on the screen. That tells me something is happening here.
And
right?
I would love to
I
hear
go
from our volunteers and our board on that, because this is a great opportunity for us to hear what you feel we need. So please chime in.
I'm not a CASA, I'm on the board, but I work in the school district here, and I'm working with lots of students. And one of the things, I think it's just little things. I think we do a really good job here in Abilene, the big country, CASA. I'm really proud of our organization. But I think it's little things like I have students who will come in here who are in foster care. I'm the only Black professional woman on my campus, for one. So I attract people, kids of color. I attract all the kids because I'm the cool counselor. So, but in particular, young women in particular, they see, representation matters. So you go to people that look like you and you feel safe. And so I'm happy to be that person for any of our students. But in particular, my brown girls will come in here often who are placed in foster homes. And one of the things, and women, we know this, our hair.
Mhm.
Just little things like training our foster families or our advocates on helping our kids feel their best selves. If you don't feel good about yourself, if you're already in a strange place, your hair is looking crazy. Mine is today. We had a rough day. And that can throw your day off, right? But as a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 16-year-old, you're having to deal with that appearance issue. You already have low self-esteem, just little things like hair, having proper training for that. And then knowing how to even bring that kind of stuff up without making that person like you, like me, anybody, you don't want to feel silly or a charity case or anything like that, but knowing how to navigate some of just little things like that. I think that goes a long way. My kids know here I have a closet full of stuff. And it's nothing for us to have, hey, I found a new gel today. You should try this. Or here's a really cool shampoo that you might like. I have a little club here that's just for stuff like that. But I think it's little things like that that make a huge difference in how a young person feels about themselves and how they go on to just be successful in life. And that's something small that a foster family, an advocate, whoever, when you learn those things, better, you can add that to your tool belt. I think we'll be more successful in helping our kids as well. So that's just something small to think about.
Thank you. Anne, do you have your hand up?
Well, I've got 3 little African refugee boys, and I get the sense that they don't see a difference. They don't see themselves any different than any other kid.
Mm-hmm.
They know their color's different. They know everyone's color's different, but they don't see themselves, and they don't really, things don't really affect them until someone in society, until
Mm-hmm.
another kid on the playground, until someone else says something about their skin color or makes the assumption about their athletic ability or something like that. And then these kids are like, why am I different? And that's been a very interesting process for me to just see and understand and experience with them.
And thank you for that. So there's a training called Knowing Who You Are. And it's a training that teaches healthy racial and ethnic identity. And actually National CASA is doing a refresh and bringing it back, which I'm really happy about. And so what you're saying, something that's so important, is that most people don't know a difference until society hits them in the face. Most children are raised at home with loving parents who are just teaching them to care about themselves and have pride in themselves. And you're right, it's when you walk out the door, and that's for most of us. I don't wake up every day singing I'm Black. I know that I am, but what happens is when I walk out the door, somebody doesn't have a problem reminding me that I'm Black. And with that, I have coping skills. I know how to deal. And what we want to do, especially with children that are in foster care that don't have the alignment or the life that I had with loving family and support and resources and all of this, to help them. Yes, people are going to see you different. How to have that conversation with them. And to ignore that, it's probably what feels comfortable, but probably not best. Because they have to have coping skills. And so one of the things when you're thinking about what your program can do is continue to have these type of trainings around this, go deeper in a way of truly understanding what these kids face, recognize that kids are saying probably things to them because that's what society does do, and then how you can help them. And so it's not like they don't probably see themselves as different until somebody reminds them. And that's the point. And we want to be able to give them what they need so they can have a healthy ethnic identity. If they are African, they should be proud of that and how we can help them have a better understanding of that. So, you know, I love what you just said. That's exactly what happens to our children. And then how do we help them? Do we reinforce and say, yeah, you're not different? Well, let's talk about this for a little bit. Tell me what's going on for you, right? Let's find out from the child or the young person how that makes them feel. And then you can begin to address those issues. And race and ethnicity, language, all those things play a big part in children that are Black and brown. And then African is a total new ball game. Like I would probably have to educate myself even more so as well. And that's what I want to say to all of you is how you can continue to keep educating yourself around these issues, these topics. I do love the hair idea. That is crucial. And I see it all the time in foster care. Mm-hmm. And it's disturbing.
Dennise,
it's disturbing for me.
Dennise, have you seen the video Hair Love?
Oh yeah, is that with Chris Rock?
Yeah, it's I don't know who does it. It's a book, it's a children's book that they kind of it's a video too on YouTube, just about 5 minutes long, but it's so sweet. And who knew that hair was such a big thing, you know?
Yeah. And it's simple things, guys. I love this. What are the books that you have? Right? What's in your library? When people walk into your organization, what are they seeing? What can you do? I love the simple way of doing things, right? If you're working with a little young girl, it might be just reading a book that she could relate to, right? So that's pretty exciting. So there are simple things as you guys continue to have these types of discussions and try to figure out how you can continue the awesome advocacy that you guys are really doing in your organization, making a difference to all the children in your community, and supporting the families so you can have a strong community, is to continue to have these conversations and think about what are some things that you guys can practice and put in place within your own program. So I appreciate your time. I went over a little bit, and for that, I apologize.
There are no apologies necessary. I'm real emotional right now, and I'm really not sure why, except I've really enjoyed this conversation today, Dennise.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate you guys. You guys are amazing. And we're all doing the work. We're all trying to learn.
And I really just appreciate your being willing to be a voice and help open up this conversation. I'm so thankful for all of our advocates and our board members and our staff that are willing to be uncomfortable, stretch ourselves and grow. It's so important. And I look forward to, I don't know if we'll call it conversation.
Rebel, can I do this? If you guys will just give me, indulge me. Maybe I do this at the end of some of the trainings, just one word, whatever it could be. Like, so Rebel, I might would take away emotional.
Yeah.
So just one word, and
hey guys,
you guys do it.
Word. And if you don't want to say it out loud, put it in the chat box.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
Unmute and give us some words.
I'd say hope.
Hope. Love it.
Thought-provoking.
Thought-provoking. Love it.
Awareness.
Learning. Always learning.
Yeah.
Grace.
Grace.
I was going to use enlightening, so don't ask me to expound on that, but that's my word.
So I see awareness in the chat. This is everybody's opportunity to participate. Caring for others. I love that. That is so right. This is all we're asking. I know it's complicated. I know that seems, because we're not used to talking about these issues, right? But really, it is about caring And I love the thing about CASA is that we get to love too. And yes, I'm Texas CASA and I said it. We get to love. We get to give love. And I love that. That's why I came to CASA. I was on the other side. And to be able to be over here and be that connected to a child or their family, it's amazing. Change. See another hope. That's what we're going to end on, people, because that's what's real. And I appreciate everything that you guys, openness, are doing in your community. And I look forward to when we can one day all be in the same room together.
Let's hope that it's our next conversation. You come to Abilene and we will get it done. We're looking forward to that, Dennise. So guys, show our appreciation to her. Send her high five, send her heart, and love. And we appreciate you so much, Dennise. Guys, I don't know, Dennise is going to send me the link to that reference that she was talking about, that study. I'll share that with you guys. I'm going to do something a little bit different today. Instead of doing just door prizes for certain numbers, all of you that logged in today, I'm going to have a flash drive, a CASA flash drive for you. And so I'll leave them with Emily. And when you're up here, when you're doing your case review, or your supervisors can get them, I'll make them available and just say, hey, I'm here to pick up my flash drive from the training, because I believe we all deserve a reward for participating in this conversation today. And I want to ask, I'm not sure if Dee is still on here, but Lakira, yeah, they're both still on here. Lakira and Dee are on here. Is there anything you guys as board members, and Dee is also an advocate, is there anything you would like to say to our group while we still have a few of us on here?
This was fantastic training. And Rebel, I applaud you for pulling all the training together. This is something that's necessary, because I do still have a child. And trust me, she is a handful. She's been in every kind of foster home possible. So this is like refresher for me. And because I sometimes come with older ideas and older thoughts, it's nice to be enlightened with new material and get a new awareness, a new thought process going. So I really enjoyed it. And please, have more of this type of thing. And I like how CASA works in terms of pulling in volunteers. Either you go to churches, it's word of mouth from us to other individuals, people that are like-minded and care about children. There's so many positives that I could probably give you a quick sermon, but I won't. But thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome, and thank you for that encouragement. That's amazing. Lakira, anything?
Miss D said everything, but just that it's encouraging to see you guys all here. You obviously have a heart and passion and care, a genuine care for our children. And it's just encouraging to see that you're taking the extra step, going the extra mile to really get to see who the person is. It's one thing to acknowledge somebody based off of their colors, another thing to see the real person, and we're more than just the house that we live in. And so I just applaud you for doing that and continue to do the work. You guys are just blessing the kids and making a difference in the world around us. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you. We appreciate you. And I love what she said, that, this is just our house. And I am so thankful that people don't judge most of us off of what they see on the outside. And we need to offer that same respect to other people and that same consideration. We've got to see each other for who we are. And so I just applaud you all for joining in this conversation today. I really am emotional. I don't know what's going on with me today, but I am just so thankful for every one of you. Thank you guys. You're a blessing. Don't forget, we have another training coming up in a couple of weeks, and that will be in person. So I'll send out the information for that. We appreciate you all. You are the heart of what we do. And I love what Dee said about recruit a friend. We need more men. We need more people of color. We need people we have 85 different countries represented in Taylor County because of the International Rescue Committee. And that's a big task to try. And we have a lot of the children in care. So we need people that can help. We have a confidential companion that's going to train in a couple of weeks that speaks Swahili. If they can speak some of the different languages that these families speak, we need them. So think about who you could recruit, who you could reach out to, and let me know. But we appreciate you all. Thank you so much. And you guys are released. Bye. Thank you. Bye.